Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scale, a Cannabis Tech Innovation Series. My name is Ellis Smith, and I work with American Cannabis Company, and I'll be your host today for the presentation, Growing the Hemp Industry. I'd like to welcome our guest presenter, Carl Lehrberger, who's the Executive Manager, co-founder of Pure Hemp Technology. Carl is a renewable energy entrepreneur, environmental activist, researcher, and author. He has a 40-year career in renewable energy with expertise in recycling, garbology, biorefining, and industrial hemp. He's also the co-founder of Pure Vision Technology, Inc., a technology development enterprise pioneering the bioeconomy, and more recently, Pure Hemp Technology, which is advancing the industrial hemp revolution by promoting whole hemp utilization, conventional and next-generation hemp processing technologies. Before I turn over to Carl, I'd like to remind everyone to submit your questions via the Q&A widget, and we'll answer as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation, and we'll reply via email to the questions that we do not cover. So let's get started. Carl, thanks for coming on the show today, and I'm going to turn the keys over to you, and we're looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Oh, thank you so much, Ellis, and it's great to be here to give a presentation on growing the hemp industry to Cannabis Tech webinar participants. So thank you very much. I would like to welcome all of you. I'm broadcasting from Pure Hemp Technology headquarters in Fort Lupton, Colorado. This is the home of Pure Vision Technology, our parent company, Pure Hemp, and our affiliated Pure Kind Botanicals, which is our company that is involved in the extraction of cannabinoid business. I would also just like to say that rural Weld County is our home just north of Denver. It's one of the largest agricultural counties in Colorado. And we got started in this hemp industry in 2014 with the advent of legalization of industrial hemp in Colorado. But prior to that, we have a very rich history in the industry space called biorefining. Our parent company, Pure Vision Technology, was founded in 1992 by brother Ed Lehrberger and myself. And we created Pure Vision essentially to change the world of biorefining. Biorefining is really, simply stated, refining biomass in biorefineries, which are akin to refining oil in oil refineries. Biomass refers to non-food plant materials, which include trees, corn stalks, and of course hemp stalks. And our company has evaluated and processed many different species of the biomass, including sugarcane bagasse, softwoods, hardwoods, and of course, hemp stalks. In 2014, we created Pure Hemp with the advent of legalization. And in 2015, we created Pure Kind Botanicals to process hemp flowers into CBD intermediates and to market hemp-infused products. Our mission remains advancing industrial-scale biorefining technology, which will create new supplies of biomaterials for many industries, and I'll be talking about that a little later. Being in the biomass space, in the hemp space, we've grown through strategic partnerships and alliances, which is really how our industry has to grow. We got to work together, people. So Pure Hemp is an industry pioneer by the virtue that marijuana and industrial hemp have been illegal. I'm sorry about that. Beginning in 1937. And we have been refining hemp into fibers, sugars. We've been looking at processing seeds into food products. And for those of you here in listening to this webinar, one of the issues is if I'm going to get in this hemp industry, how are we going to do it? One of the big issues that we have when I deal with in my audience is where they are in the hemp industry and how to get into the hemp industry if they're not into it. So I spend a lot of time kind of qualifying people about what their interest is and what their appetite is. So if you are in the hemp industry, you know what motivates you, but you need to take a look at your strengths and weaknesses and to assess how big you want to go in the hemp industry. You also need to assess your available resources because a lot of the activities in the hemp industry require resources. Now, when we talk about hemp refining, we are talking about three components of the hemp plant. We're talking about stalks, seeds, and flowers. And in the case of, we're going to be talking about each of these streams today. In the case of hemp processing of the stalks, we have two different technologies that we're going to be presenting today: decortication and advanced refining. In the case of processing cannabinoids, that's the flower stream. We are talking about extracting cannabinoids, specifically CBD, from the flowers and producing CBD oils, distillates, isolates, and topicals. And in the case of the seeds, we're talking about producing food-based products and nutritionally based products from the seed itself. So let's talk a little more about our industry and the supply chain. I'd like you to look at this from two different perspectives. One, from the perspective of the plant itself, which is hemp for cannabinoids, processing the flowers, hemp seeds for food, and processing hemp stalks into fiber using both traditional decortication equipment and using hemp stalks for chemicals. Now, when we look at the hemp supply chain, we see four circles: agriculture, intermediate processing, product manufacturing, finance, sales, and marketing. Each of these is distinct sectors. And when we talk about your appetite to get into the hemp industry, this is what we're talking about. Agriculture, believe it or not, is probably the easiest aspect of the supply chain. People have been growing hemp for thousands of years, and even today, we have over 100,000 acres of hemp grown in Canada to produce seeds in a very mature industry. We have a long way to go in this country, and there's a lot to learn, but when we talk about doing research into agriculture, what we're talking mostly about is identifying the right cultivars or varieties of hemp. The second sector is intermediate processing. The intermediate processors take the seeds or the stalk or the flower and they make a crude or an intermediate material that then goes to a final product manufacturer. So as an example, a whole hemp stalk would go into a decorticator at an intermediate processing facility to produce long fiber and short fiber. Then that short fiber, for example, would go to the product manufacturing facility where it would be milled and bagged as a, say, animal bedding product or a hempcrete product with a name put on it. That happens at the product manufacturer. And of course, in all cases, we're dealing with the finance, sales, and marketing. So as you look at where you are today in the hemp industry or where you want to be in the hemp industry, consider that we're talking about three different materials: stalks, seeds, and flowers. And within the context of those materials, we're talking about four sectors: growing it, immediate and intermediate processing, making a final product, and then financing it and doing all the sales and marketing. So this chart provides just a little more detail on what I mentioned, and I'm going to be talking about some of the issues faced. Let's begin with seeds and talking about growing issues. The big issue for growers is whether we're dealing with growing seeds, CBDs, or even getting good fiber stalks, is selecting the right cultivar. Anyone interested in being in agricultural growing has to focus on selecting the right cultivars. And of course, this involves making sure that the grow has less than 3.3% THC in the flowers. That's the level that most states have adopted to distinguish marijuana from industrial hemp. In Colorado and in most states, if your flowers have less than 0.3% THC, it's considered hemp. If it has more than 0.3% THC, it's considered marijuana. And this is really critical because a specific variety, 1 year, that tests negative for THC, the next year when those seeds are planted can actually test hot, that is over 0.3%. So selecting the seeds is really important. From seeds, we go to an intermediate processor where we get either a seed oil and flour, being the hulls that are once the seed is dehulled, you can create flour from the hulls. The hearts are the remaining product that can be sold. Of course, if you squeeze the seed, you get oil, and the remaining product is a meal. These are some of the intermediates that would come from a seed refinery: seed oil, flour, meal, and hearts, which then go to final product manufacturing, where they become packaged hemp hearts, bottled hemp oil, protein powder, hemp seed infused products like health bars. For growers out there, big issue. Is it organic? Very important. And if you want to sell on the mass market, we're competing with the Canadians. Canadians are producing organic hemp seed oil. So really, to go toe-to-toe with Canada, we have to be producing organic hemp seed oil as well. If you're going to get involved in processing the products, you have to be FDA compliant. You have to have clean rooms and make sure that everything is done according to squeaky clean, not only for the health benefits, but for the bragging rights. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of infrastructure now to process seeds, or, candidly speaking to our audience, interest in financing seed processing plants. And I'd love to talk to our people in the business that want to push that forward, because it's really an important part of the industrial hemp infrastructure in the United States. Let's move to the CBD sector. Again, the most important thing about growing a CBD-rich crop is identifying the right cultivar and making the decision if you're going to be doing any extraction whatsoever. CBD growers have found that really to be in the supply chain, they have to undertake some initial extractions, and many of them are getting equipment to do that. The most important thing for the grower is to make sure that the hemp buds, once they're mature, are mold-free and are properly dried prior to intermediate processing, which in the case of CBD extractions involve producing a crude oil or a concentrate, and also other intermediate materials would include a distillate product, which is what is often used in vape pens, isolates, which are pure CBD without any other cannabinoids and terpenes. These go to final processing and often involve formulating the product, producing it, bottling it, and labeling it. Some of the big issues for those that want to be involved or are involved in the CBD sector: moving state and federal regulations. It's just every week there's something new. So be prepared to jump through hoops. Of course, the THC issue is paramount, but the biggest issue that I would talk to our audience about is anyone getting into this and wanting to get into this have to recognize that while there's incredible growth, there's incredible competition from companies that have been doing this for years. So if you're getting started from the get-go, it's best to kind of team up with some folks that have been doing this for a while. We're going to talk just a little about fiber from the stalks. The traditional processing of stalks involves retting, that is curing the stalks in agriculture. The stalks, to get a good fiber product, traditionally have been retted in the field, as they do today in China. This is a process that allows microbial action to help separate the long outer fiber, which is used for the textiles, from the shorter inner fiber, often known as wood. In this country, we advocate growers ret their hemp stalks in a method known as standing retting, not field retting, so that after the seed or the flower is taken off, most of the stalk remains standing in the field for a season so that it doesn't touch the ground and get potential for mold, one of our biggest enemies out there. The primary process, the intermediate process for stalks, is known as decortication, using a decorticator. We'll talk a little more about that later, but the intermediates produced are hurd, which is the short fiber, and bast, which is the long fiber. These have lives of their own and would go into final processor. For example, the bast fiber would go to a auto manufacturer that would use that bast fiber in interior panels of automobiles. The hurd might go to a hempcrete manufacturer that takes that hurd and makes a mixture of hempcrete. Here, the issues for fiber have to do with the consistency of the stalk and the fiber from the get-go. So for those growers that are interested in selling into the fiber markets, we'll want to make sure that it's a good fiber crop that can meet the specifications of the manufacturers. I'm not going to talk too much about fiber from the stalks using advanced technologies right now, but I will address that a little later. So here's another way of looking at this whole value chain, and I'm starting at the lower left-hand corner with the flowers and the seeds. We've talked a little about them. We will talk more later. The seeds obviously traditionally go to nutrition and health. The flowers traditionally go into extract products that include topicals as well as tinctures and many other type of products that for the pharmaceutical and medicinal industries. The stalks, we can see there's so much potential for the stalks. They can be used as pulp to make paper products. The pulps can also be used to make hempcrete, insulation, and higher value products, including alpha cellulose and nanocellulose based products like films. The traditional hemp fiber processing, most of us know about. We can make ropes with a little more effort, mill-ready textile-grade fiber to make textiles. And right now, one of the biggest markets is in the auto industry for interior panels. Many people don't know that the hemp stalk it contains a lot of sugars. And we extract these sugars in advanced technologies. And there are different sugars. One type of sugar known as xylose can be used as a sweetener. Another sugar from the hemp stalk is called glucose. And this is a sugar that can be used to produce alcohols as well as many other specialty chemicals, including lactic acid and acetic acid. These sugars can also be used to make many different types of plastics used in packaging as well as in containers. And something I'm going to be talking a little about today, many of you have never heard of, is a material called lignin. Lignin represents about 20% of the stalk. It's found in all biomass, and it's the binder of a plant. It keeps the plant from breaking, and so it bends in the wind. Well, we can recover this lignin, and that becomes a starting material for making many products. ranging from vanillin, a substitute for vanilla, composites, and plastics. So it's a big world out there of hemp and hemp processing. And I'm going to, for the rest of the presentation, do my best to kind of bring it down to where business people and those entrepreneurs that are seeking to get into it could find a little grounding. The takeaway from this slide of the total U.S. hemp-based products is the growing market is being met by hemp supplied outside the United States. With the exception of the hemp used for CBD, because we do have a very strong CBD infrastructure here in this country, most of the hemp oils and hemp consumer products and textiles are coming from outside the United States. This is going to change, but the change of substituting foreign-grown hemp for domestic-grown hemp will require infrastructure that is sorely lacking today. A great example would be consumer textiles. People think that we're going to use those stocks and make clothes in America from hemp. And right now, 14% of that total approximate $700 million in 2016 spent on hemp was spent on clothing and textiles from hemp. But all of it came from China. And that's not likely to change, folks. And the reason for that is because China has a $300 million infrastructure to make textiles out of hemp. And our $300 million textile infrastructure went away a little after the turn of the century. So even if we are producing textile-grade fibers from hemp in the near future, without an infrastructure to make clothing, those mill-ready fibers will probably be shipped to China and then back to the United States. So this is a really fast-growing industry, and we expect this year that the total could be $1 billion spent on hemp products in the United States. So let's move to some of the sectors themselves, starting with CBDs. Extracting and marketing CBD-infused products is just the hottest thing going on here from a marketing perspective in the country and probably in the world. It's just taken off as there's been more and more research that indicates that CBD, which stands for cannabidiol, one of over 100 cannabinoids found specifically in the hemp plant, have magical and amazing healing qualities to them. And we are now seeing CBDs or cannabidiol found in many, many products ranging from skincare products to topicals all the way to dog food. I mean, it's really an amazing situation. Most of the people that come to talk to Pure Hemp Technology really are interested in this aspect of the business because it's up and running and dramatically growing. For those that want to get into it, from the growing side, getting the best cultivars is critical. For those on the processing side, selecting the best process to do the extraction is really the biggest decision you'll face. Most companies use critical CO2 as the way to extract cannabinoids from the flowers. Our company, Pure Kind Botanicals, uses an ethanol extraction process, and there are many others, including non-solvent processes and fossil-based solvents, including butane and propane. The most popular CBD products now that we see in the marketplace are these extracts that are tinctures that are put under the tongue or rubbed into specific areas of the body. And they are generally sold in tincture form mixed with MCT, which is a coconut derivative. Most of the manufacturers of these tinctures strive for organic status, but that's a moving target. And much of the differentiation in this industry is about the process itself, as well as the whether or not it's an organic process or not. We also see distillates being produced, which is a refined hemp intermediate, often used in vaping. And we also see the distillates used to make isolates. For those of you who don't know what an isolate is, it's a crystal of pure CBD. All of the terpenes and non-CBD cannabinoids such as THC have been stripped from it. So formulating products and marketing and producing them is really the action today, and that's where most people in this sector are getting involved. And for good reason. The estimate of $450 million in 2020 for U.S. hemp-based CBD product sales may be off by 100%, and we could be looking at over $1 billion in U.S. CBD product sales just in 2 years from now. Some of the takeaways from this chart, notice that 22% of the CBD product sales are over the internet and through direct sales. And also, right now, we don't see pharmaceutical making the big dent, but within the next 2 to 3 years, we fully expect both large and small pharmaceutical companies to really get involved in CBDs, really hit the market hard. And so anybody wanting to get into this, you should be looking over their shoulders at what Big Pharma is doing. Not only are they trying to kill the natural growers and the small producers, but they're really trying to completely tie up the market. Our company, Pure Kind Botanicals, we do internet sales. We sell directly to practitioners. We are in the mass retail market, and we sell to natural and specialty stores. And I will say that each one of those sales chains has many nuances, and getting into it from the marketing side is really the most important thing to move product through the supply chain. There's a lot to be said about this part of the business, and maybe we'll pick it up when we talk about question and answers a little later on. But I am going to move on to a more traditional sector in industrial hemp, or often called agricultural hemp, is in hemp seeds. And I'd like to dispel a myth right from the get-go. Most people do not know that industrial hemp has two oil products. There's the seed oil that after you basically press the seed, you get that pure omega-rich oil that has no cannabinoids, no THC. And you get a second oil from the flowers. That's where the cannabinoids are produced in the trichomes, and the cannabinoid extracts contain the CBDs. People walk into our office and, hey, we want to make hemp oil. Well, we have to remind them that there's two sectors, hemp seeds and cannabinoids, and what are you interested in? But we're here talking about hemp seeds, and this is a traditional crop. Farmers know how to grow seeds, processors know how to process seeds, bottlers know how to bottle oilseed products, and we just have to look as an example to the north, to our Canadian neighbors, to see how it's done. We don't really have to reinvent the wheel, we just have to learn how it's being done. And we have a great example with Canadian agriculture. And you know, one of the really compelling reasons for producing hemp seeds is it's extraordinarily valuable. They make up to 30% by weight of the plant. The pounds per acre produced by an oilseed crop exceeds all other oilseed crops. And the oil, the hemp oil, is the richest, highest quality of them all. So existing market, high value plant, high production, this is the way to go, in my opinion. The problems and the showstoppers, we're competing with the Canadians. The second thing, we really don't have big infrastructure here, and it will require capital and will require financing to put seed processing places in place. when you go to the health food store and buy that protein powder or that hemp food bar, bring it on. That's going to drive the market. But realize until we get processing plants set up, those ingredients will likely be coming from outside the United States. We'd love to talk to entrepreneurs about producing seeds and establishing seed to food processing facilities. Now, the most significant part of the plan is the stalks. And it's tragic and regrettable that today, whether you're in Canada or whether in the United States, most of the stalks go to waste. They get left in the field. Why? No market. Why is there no market? No infrastructure. We certainly have a demand for hemp auto products. We certainly have a demand for hemp paper, but we don't have the hemp processing capabilities set up here. So let's talk a little about stalk processing. Traditionally, the grower has to cure the plant in a process known as retting. It takes a season. Then it has to be properly baled and stored and delivered to a facility. The traditional process to add higher value to the stalks is known as decortication. There's a decorticator pictured there, kind of looks like a turn-of-the-century decorticator, and you can see that the operators there have a nice fiber in their hand that they shake and that it will go to a mill. So that's an ancient old decorticator. There are other decorticators available, more modern. But the point of a decorticator is that it separates the hurd, which is the inner woody material, the short fiber, from that outer bast or long fiber. And so just to give a perspective to growers out there, if you were to bale your hemp stalks and they were properly cured and deliver them to a market, that baled hemp stalk would probably be worth between $90 and $120 a ton, consistent with the value of wheat straw or corn stover. These are residues. After decorticating the stalk so that there are two intermediates, hurd and bast, that ton will grow in value to about $1,000 a ton. The hurd goes to specific markets to use that woody biomass, including animal bedding markets and hempcrete markets. The bast fiber have many opportunities to find home in making rope, cordage, building materials, and all sorts of great things, all the way up to textiles. However, to get to textiles, we have to add another process called degumming, and I'm going to talk about that in this slide. This is a picture of a decorticator. It's a decorticator that's set up right there in the field. Some are stationary, some are mobile. And this particular decorticator requires the stalks be retted or cured. Some decorticators can accept green stalks, and there's some real benefits to that. So traditionally, the hemp stalks are cured, baled, stored, and delivered to a decorticator. And then the decorticator separates the hurd from the bast. Now, for those industries or companies that want to see textile-grade fibers, we need to add a process called degumming that prepares those nice bast fibers to a condition known as mill-ready, where the mills can take them and put them on spindles and start spinning away. I mentioned before, our country, sadly, is very far from getting mill-ready fiber, much less getting textiles. Because most of the hemp stalks are going to waste, this is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs in agriculture and in equipment and in biorefining to solve a growing problem. What do we do with the stalks? How do we add value to the stalks? Well, the simple process of doing that is add a decorticator to the supply chain, giving us two commodities, hurd and bast. That's not only going to give much higher value to the growers, but it's going to provide all these intermediate materials for American-made products, whether they be building products like hempcrete, whether they be industrial products like making auto interiors, or building products like insulation and many, many other things. So for the short term, the decortication equipment is an essential transition to the United States industry being able to utilize hemp stalks and create higher value products. Now, the advanced technology that I earlier referred to is a process developed by Pure Vision Technology and Pure Hemp Technology. I have some slides that discuss and describe this, but I am going to go quickly through these because more for education purposes on what the future holds, rather than boots on the ground, what we can do today. But just for the benefit of our audience, most of the work here at Pure Hemp Technology involves scaling up a dramatic technology known as continuous countercurrent reactors, or CCRs. It's akin to a mini pulp mill, but in the case of CCRs, we can process the hemp stalks in 4 minutes compared to the days and hours a pulp mill will take to get a clean pulp. The countercurrent process takes place in a reactor. What makes it unique is that the twin screws in that reactor move the solids downstream in that reactor. You can see where it says solid pass, while the liquid is added at the end of the process and moves upstream in counterflow or countercurrent. In that reactor, we get incredible chemistry, and the basic components of the hemp plant come apart very quickly. And there are 3 streams from this. We have pulp, which is essentially purified cellulose, and we have a liquor stream composed of that lignin that I referred to earlier as the plant binder, and the xylose sugar. This is a picture of our CCR in our pilot plant. It has a 1/2 ton per day capacity, and it's the only equipment like this in the whole world. We use this to produce paper samples, get lignin samples to manufacturers, and we also have taken the sugars from both the glucose sugar stream and the xylose sugar stream and made different products, including hemp beer, one of the Pure Hemp Technology projects that we're working on. Our mission is to scale this up to industrial scale, and anybody out there that's looking for the developing infrastructure for the future and developing industries of the future, I'd be very happy to speak with you about this. So again, going through this very quickly, the takeaway here, if you notice that picture at the bottom of toilet paper and paper towel, those are products that were produced from pulp made at our CCR here in Fort Lupton. And we worked with a converter to produce the toilet paper and the paper towels, as well as writing materials. So once we get out of decorticated fiber and move toward the CCR platform and making pulps, we really have the whole world of industrial companies and of industrial and consumer products that we can be supplying. Again, this is going through very quickly to see how big the pulp and paper industry is, and once we get away from just kind of making paper or corrugated materials, how many different products in industry and in packaging can be take advantage of these very high-value agricultural pulps. So maybe most of you before this conversation haven't heard about lignin, so I'm going to just take a few minutes and reinforce what I said earlier. Lignin is the second largest biopolymer after cellulose on the planet. It is produced in large quantity in pulp mills, but the lignin produced in these pulp mills are contaminated with chemicals. They're very high molecular, they're very gooey. There's not much you can do with them. So while millions of tons are produced, only a fraction of that finds its way to industrial applications. The lignin coming from our CCR is very qualitatively different. It's more akin to a native lignin. It has a very low molecular weight. It's not gooey and dark. It's very light and fluffy. And it has a low molecular weight so that it can be formulated into many different types of products. We are targeting making vanillum out of the lignin, which is a substitute for vanilla, which is, believe it or not, in short supply worldwide. There are other chemicals that can be made, including terephthalic acid, which is known as TPA. And if you're familiar with PET bottles, the PET bottles, the PE stands for polyethylene, the T stands for terephthalic acid. Terephthalic acid makes up 2/3 of the bottle, the soda bottles, the water bottles that you're looking at there. And we can have a plant-based lignin to terephthalic acid process to substitute for the petroleum to terephthalic acid process that is used universally to make PET containers today. I will just say that many people are interested in hemp plastics, and we get so many calls about it that it's just a sign of the times of how important it is to do something about our plastic problem that we have in terms of plastic waste. And this incredible lignin component coming from hemp and biomass is an incredible opportunity to substitute plant-based polymers for oil-based polymers to make many, many different types of plastics. So for those of you that are interested in plastics, there are short-term solutions to provide hemp-based plastics and long-term solutions to substitute oil-based plastics. And for those that have the appetite, I'd be happy to talk to you about that at another time. Moving to the third basic component or platform of what comes out of a continuous countercurrent reactor are sugars. The sugars from what is known as the hemicellulose fraction of the hemp, which represents about 25% of the plant, are principally xylose sugars. But the cellulose fraction can be converted into glucose. So you can look and add those numbers up. We can get up to 65% of the plant converted into sugars. That's pretty amazing. And what are the markets for those sugars? Well, there's many, many consumer products and nutraceuticals. I've mentioned xylitol, going from xylose to xylitol, the healthy sugar. But there are also many opportunities to go to specialty chemicals, including alcohols that can be used for booze to fuels and provide materials for many, many different industries. Now, as I get near the end of my presentation, much of what we talk about in the industrial hemp space is product replacement opportunities. As an example, for let's say a hemp-infused a plastic, it could be as simple as substituting hemp fibers for fiberglass to make an extruded hemp product out of polypropylene or polyethylene, known as a biocomposite. Biocomposites are available today. But there are many, many, many opportunities for product replacement, and this is one product in need of serious replacement, the PET container. And this slide is an example of how with the right financing, with the right technical team, we can produce a 100% product, in this case, a hemp plastic bottle. I mentioned before that PET stands for polyethylene and terephthalic acid. The polyethylene can be made from the CCR sugars, and the terephthalic acid can be made from the CCR lignin. The inks and adhesives that go on the labeling, they can be made also with the lignin. The label, obviously coming from the hemp paper, as well as all the packaging materials made from pulp. And what goes inside that beverage? Well, if we're talking about non-alcoholic, we can sweeten that beverage with hemp-based sugars. If we are talking about an alcoholic beverage, we can ferment those sugars into beer and ultimately into vodka, gin, and rum. This is complex, and there are much easier places to start in the supply chain, but really this is what it's about. Growing domestically high-grade hemp, having established infrastructure and processing facilities to make domestically produced products, and selling that to the largest hemp products market in the world, the United States. It's going to require infrastructure. So as we now are at the end of our presentation, I'd like to say, if you want to get in touch with me, Carl Lerberger, I can be reached at my purehemptech.com email address. I would encourage our listeners to visit www.purehemptech, that's TECH.com, to learn more about all of the incredible things we're doing with the incredible hemp plant. And for those that are interested in the CBD side of the industrial hemp world, please visit www.purekindbotanicals.com. Our motto is be pure and kind to your body, soul, and mind. And look us up on the internet. And Ellis, I hope you're standing by there to help if we have any questions to ask. And I'd like to thank you for facilitating, and also thank our attentive audience. And hopefully we'll have some good questions.
You bet, Carl. Thank you very much. That was a wealth of knowledge and just great insight to see where this booming hemp industry is evolving into. We do have a handful of questions here. It looks like we've got about 12 minutes that we can kind of take advantage of. I'd like to ask a question personally first, if that'd be okay, and then we can go through the rest of the questions here that we have from our audience. In Colorado, we had understanding that you weren't able to sell oils or CBD products outside of the state. Has that changed? And can you give me a little more clarification on how you guys are able to grow here in the state and now export outside of our state lines? As I know we were having issues with that in the years past.
Okay, so good question. Thank you. The question is, what are the legal issues around selling CBD products produced in Colorado, or for that matter, anywhere, and selling them over a state line? Well, the first point is it's a fast-moving world out there, Ellis, and things, dramatically change. However, CBDs are being legally sold in all 50 states right now, and the big issue of selling CBD products has to do with how much THC, if any, they have. A typical state like Colorado has laws in place that distinguish marijuana as being over 0.3% THC in the flower, and distinguished from hemp, which has less than 0.3% THC. So that's really the big issue in terms of the interstate commerce for now. I say for now because there are federal agencies involved, including the DEA, which even to this day shows hemp stocks as a Schedule 1 and CBD as Schedule 1. But utilizing the Farm Bill legislation that allows states to not only grow, to enact policies that allow farmers to grow hemp and to process hemp, and relying on the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which prohibit federal intrusion into state initiatives like that, we don't see today a mass problem for the small producers. Having said that, it was just this week that I think Target stores announced they were going to begin selling CBD products, but the next day they pulled them from their shelves, and we don't know why. So clearly there are unresolved issues out there, but from a Colorado perspective, you can grow it in Colorado, you can process it in Colorado, and you can sell it outside the state if it is under 0.3% THC, and if all other applicable laws have been followed, including any kind of local ordinances regarding health and safety and use of clean rooms and things like that.
Great answer. I appreciate that. All right, I've got one more question, but I'm going to hold off on that as I want to get to some of our audience questions, and if I've got time, I'll go back to mine. So one question here is from a gentleman, Av, and he has a question on, are Bast from green versus redded stalks as strong?
Oh, that's a great question. So let's go back and review redding. Redding is the curing process, and typically the stalks have to be redded so you get a nice, easy separation from the long fiber and the short fiber. However, in the process of redding, especially if it's field redded, you get a lot of microbial action that takes place. And yes, that microbial action will degrade the fibers. So the green fibers are superior than the redded fibers. But it's not quite that easy because most decortication equipment relies on redded fibers, so that's what you get. However, if you were to put in one hand a redded fiber that went through a decorticator and then a non-redded fiber that went through a decorticator, that green fiber would be silky and really nice, and you know, you can see how that could be made into a $1,000 suit, you know. But that redded fiber, it's brown, it doesn't have that shine, it's not so silky. So it shouldn't be a problem, though, if we're not going for that high-end textile fabric, because, you know, cordage and things like that, even auto interiors, it should be suitable with redded fibers. So, you know, this is where we want to marry the market and the end product with the process of converting the farm-based materials into a product. They've got to be married. And if we don't have high requirements to make, for example, rope, hey, we're going to make rope out of stalks. Great. Well, it doesn't have to be the highest quality fiber. On the other hand, hey, we're going to make textiles out of the hemp fiber, the bast fiber. Whoa, they've got to be the highest value, highest quality, and expect a significant loss in that process. Whereas you have 15% of the stock being bast fibers, by the time you get to that mill, that textile mill in China, hopefully in North Carolina one of these days, or you name that state, you're down to 7%. In other words, you have 50% loss. So there's some big issues there. The advice there is target your process to the desired end product. Thank you for that question.
Great. Thanks, Carl. All right, I've got another question from Kelly. Her question is, what is involved in getting FDA compliance for a CBD and CPG company, specifically regarding manufacturing, producing consumables with isolate and distillate?
Well, any good question, Kelly, and a deep question. What about getting approvals and certified from the FDA? it's easier than you think. The clean room standards by the FDA are published, and it's really getting those standards and complying with them. It's just that simple. But recognize that it's not just the FDA that we have to be attentive to. As an example, earlier this year, the city and county of Denver sent a letter to all hemp processors in the state saying that they had to process anything sold in Denver in a clean room that had been approved or certified by Denver Environmental Health. Now, this is a municipality, not a federal government, not a state government, a municipal government. And they sent this letter out, and they gave processors 2 weeks to be in compliance and go through their hoops. And some of them were similar to FDA, but I'm just letting you know that there's more involved in just FDA approvals. Now, I don't think you go for FDA approval. Hey, FDA, approve us. It's not like that. It's more like you meet the FDA standards for a clean room or for a process. So, Kelly, it's really knowing what those regulations are, and you probably will have to have a compliance officer or an in-house engineering compliance officer to make sure you do comply. In our case, we had to drop a ceiling, we had to add this, we had to add that to our existing infrastructure to comply with Denver. So it's really learning the regs and shooting high in what you do. We go through a lot of what we do not only because it's required, but because of appearances. When we put a product out there, we want our customers to know that we've done everything in our power to make sure that not only are we compliant, but that everything is squeaky clean, super white, and that when people walk into our clean room, they're wearing booties and they're wearing hats, and it's the real world deal. And this is where you're going to find shakeout in the industry in the coming years. There are literally hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of small extractors around this country. When you start putting extraction products into food and into people's bodies, the regulations come into effect. And these small producers that aren't able to comply with these somewhat stringent clean room codes, they're going to be falling by the wayside. And as an example of that, Denver will not allow CBD products to be sold unless it's a approved facility. So there's a lot there, Kelly. Hopefully I gave you a little insight, but it's pretty much find the rules and follow them to the T.
Carl, we've got about a minute and a half left here. We've got a few more questions, but I'd kind of like to see if we can wrap this up, as I don't want to run out of time here. I've got one quick question I think you may be able to answer for us. It is from, and I apologize if I mispronounce your first name, Anusuya. And her question is, are hemp plastics biodegradable?
Hi, Anusuya. Well, here we are talking about plastics, and plastics are not plastics because there are so many different types: polyethylene, polyurethane, polystyrene, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the issue of biodegradability has to do with the process of making the plastics. Yes, hemp plastics can be made biodegradable, but when you make a plastic biodegradable, they're not recyclable. In other words, you don't want a plastic resin to be broken down in the recycling stream. You want to reuse it. So once again, it's the product manufacturer, the product developer has to decide, is the product going to be recyclable, reusable, and or degradable, I should say. And in the case of degradability, it can be done, but it's not desirable in all cases. But the short answer is yes, hemp plastics can be made to be biodegradable, but are not inherently biodegradable.
All right, I'd like to thank our audience for attending. Thank you, Carl Lehrberger, for getting on today with a presentation from Pure Hemp Technology. I'm Ellis Smith from American Cannabis Company. We appreciate everyone signing in today for the first Scale, a Cannabis Tech Innovation Series. Please stay tuned as we will have some great topics in the future for you. So thanks for attending today and have a great day, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Good journeys, everybody.